The stars looked like tiny dots from the viewport of Captain Alice Ward's quarters. She sat at her desk looking at the screen that showed the ship's history. The USS Nighthawk wasn't the biggest ship in the United Earth Fleet. It wasn't even the newest, but it was the most feared. Alice touched the screen and images of past battles appeared. 377 fights, and the Nighthawk had won every single one. No wonder alien species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy spoke of the ship in whispers. A soft beep came from her communicator. Alice pressed a button, and Admiral Frank Miller's face appeared on the screen. "Captain Ward," he said, his voice tight with worry. "We have a problem." Alice sat up straight. "What kind of problem, sir?" "The HFY Collective has broken through our defense line at Procyon. 6 of their dreadnoughts are heading for the human colony on Procyon 4. The Admiral's face grew grim. "There are 50,000 civilians there and no other ships close enough to help." "Except the Nighthawk," Alice said. "Except the Nighthawk," the Admiral agreed. "I know it's asking a lot. The HFY ships are 3 times your size and you're outnumbered 6 to 1. Alice smiled. "Those aren't the worst odds we've faced, sir." "No. That's why I'm sending you." The Admiral paused. "The HFY haven't encountered the Nighthawk before. They don't know to be afraid yet." "They'll learn," Alice said simply. After the call ended, Alice touched the ship-wide communication button on her desk. "Attention all crew. This is Captain Ward. We have new orders. The HFY Collective is attacking Procyon 4. We're the only ship that can get there in time. Set course immediately and prepare for battle. Ward out." Alice walked onto the bridge, where her officers were already at their stations. The main view screen showed the vast emptiness of space ahead, stars streaking by as the ship's engines pushed it faster than light. Lieutenant Commander Richard Jones looked up from the weapons console as she entered. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he ran checks on the ship's weapons. "All weapon systems are ready, Captain," he reported. "Railguns charged, missile tubes loaded." "Good," Alice said. "How long until we reach Procyon?" 5 hours, at current speed," said Lieutenant Samantha Powell from the navigation station. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her green eyes focused on her screens. "Push the engines to maximum," Alice ordered. "I want us there in 4. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Susan Clark heard the captain's order and frowned at her assistant, Jack Nelson. "Maximum speed for 4 hours," Jack said. "The engines won't like that." Susan smiled. "Then we'll have to convince them." She turned to her team. "Listen up. We need everything these engines can give us. The captain wants maximum speed for 4 hours straight." As the engineering team worked to boost power to the engines, Dr. William Harrison in the medical bay prepared his team for possible casualties. The Nighthawk rarely took serious damage in battle, but Harrison believed in being ready for anything. On the lower decks, Lieutenant Kelly Martinez briefed her Marine teams. If the fighting went badly for the HFY, they might try to board the Nighthawk. Martinez's Marines would make sure they regretted that decision. "Remember," she told her troops, "the HFY have an exoskeleton that's hard to penetrate. Aim for the joints or the sensory organs on their heads." 4 hours later, the Nighthawk dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Procyon, a bright blue-white star. On its 4th planet, 50,000 human colonists were going about their lives, unaware of the danger heading their way. The HFY fleet was already in the system, 7 giant ships moving toward the planet. Each dreadnought was shaped like a perfect geometric crystal, their hulls gleaming in the light of Procyon. Alice studied the enemy ships on her screen. 7 ships? Admiral Miller said there were 6. "They must have been joined by another," Richard said from the weapons station. "Should we call for backup?" Alice shook her head. "There's no time. We need to stop them here." "They're hailing us," said Communications Officer Peter Douglas. "On screen," Alice ordered. The main view screen changed to show the face of a HFY. Its translucent exoskeleton allowed a view of glowing organs beneath. 4 black eyes studied Alice, and mandibles clicked as it spoke. Its words translated by the ship's computer. Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Zextral of the Haxari Collective. You are outmatched. Your colony will fall. Surrender now, and we will spare your crew. Alice stood from her captain's chair, her eyes hard. This is Captain Alice Ward of the USS Nighthawk. Perhaps you've heard of us? The Haxari's glowing organs pulsed faster for a moment, a sign of surprise or concern. 1 ship cannot stand against 7, it insisted, but Alice noticed a slight change in its tone. We've beaten worse odds, Alice replied calmly. Nighthawk, out. She nodded to Peter, who cut the communication. They're moving into attack formation, Samantha reported from navigation. Alice looked at the tactical display. The Haxari ships were arranging themselves in a perfect geometric pattern, like the crystalline structure of their vessels. They're very predictable, she said. That's their weakness. She turned to Richard. Target the lead ship. Prepare quantum phase torpedoes. Richard's fingers flew over his console. Torpedoes ready, Captain. Alice looked at the enemy fleet one more time, then made her decision. All ahead full. Take us straight at them. The bridge crew exchanged glances. It was a bold move. Maybe. Even a crazy one. But they trusted their captain and they trusted the Nighthawk. Course laid in, Samantha confirmed. Engines at full power, reported Jack Nelson from engineering. Alice sat back in her chair and watched as the distance to the enemy fleet shrank rapidly. They're not changing course, Richard said with surprise. They don't believe we're really going to attack? They will, Alice said quietly. Fire torpedoes. The Nighthawk shuddered slightly as the torpedoes launched, streaking toward the lead Haxari dreadnought. The enemy ship tried to evade at the last second, but the torpedoes were too fast, too accurately aimed. They struck the crystalline hull, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks appeared, spreading rapidly across the surface. The perfect geometry of the Haxari ship began to break apart. Direct hit, Richard called out. Their forward shields are down. The other ships are responding, Samantha warned. They're trying to surround us, Alice nodded. This was where the battle truly began. Evasive pattern Delta, she ordered. Bring us around for another pass. As the Nighthawk danced among the much larger enemy vessels, the crew felt the familiar tension of combat. Not fear. The Nighthawk didn't know defeat, but the electric feeling of facing danger and overcoming it. Across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, alien species spoke of the USS Nighthawk in frightened whispers. Soon, the Haxari Collective would join them. The most feared warship in the galaxy was about to add another victory to its perfect record. The bridge of the Nighthawk shook as another Haxari blast hit their shields. Lieutenant Commander Richard Jones gripped his console tightly. Shields at 60%, he called out. That last hit was too close. Captain Alice Ward remained calm in her command chair. The Nighthawk had been fighting the 7 Haxari dreadnoughts for nearly an hour. One enemy ship was already destroyed. Its perfect crystal structure shattered into thousands of pieces that now floated in space. Another was badly damaged, drifting away from the battle. Status report, Alice ordered. 5 enemy ships still active, Richard replied. 2 are trying to circle behind us. From the navigation station, Lieutenant Samantha Powell spoke up. Captain, I've noticed something about their movement patterns. The Haxari ships always maintain the same distance from each other. They never break formation even when it would be tactically smart to do so. Alice leaned forward, interested. Can we use that against them? I think so, Samantha said. If we force one ship to move, the others will adjust to keep their perfect pattern. We might be able to herd them into a position where they can't use their main weapons effectively. Alice nodded. Make it happen, Lieutenant. The Nighthawk suddenly changed course, charging directly at one of the Haxari ships. The enemy vessel moved away as expected, and just as Samantha had predicted, the other 4 ships shifted to maintain their formation. Now, Alice ordered. Richard fired a spread of missiles, not at the ships themselves, but into the space where they would need to move to keep their formation. The Haxari had to choose between breaking their perfect pattern or flying into the missiles. 2 ships chose to keep the pattern and were hit hard by the missiles. The other 3 finally broke formation, but now they were scattered and confused. "It worked," Samantha exclaimed. "Good job," Alice said. "Now let's press our advantage." The Nighthawks swooped toward the nearest damaged dreadnought, firing railguns at point-blank range. The massive rounds punched through the weakened crystal hull, causing catastrophic damage inside. "Enemy Ship 3 is breaking apart," Richard reported with satisfaction. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Susan Clark shouted over the noise of the straining engines. "We can't keep this up much longer," she called to her team. "The heat sinks are nearly full." Jack Nelson wiped sweat from his forehead. The engine room was getting dangerously hot. "What about the emergency coolant system?" Susan nodded. "We'll have to use it. We've never needed it before, but there's a first time for everything." She pressed her communicator. "Engine room to bridge. Captain, we need to vent our heat sink soon or the engines will start to fail." On the bridge, Alice received the message with a frown. Venting the heat sinks would create a massive thermal signature that the enemy could target. "Understood, Chief. Stand by for my signal." Alice turned to her tactical display. The Nighthawk had destroyed 2 enemy ships and badly damaged a 3rd. 4 still remained active. "We need to take out at least 1 more before we vent the heat sinks," she decided. "Richard, target the damaged dreadnought. Full weapons spread." The Nighthawk turned toward the injured enemy vessel, all weapons firing at once. The Haxari ship tried to evade, but it was too slow. The barrage tore through its weakened defenses, breaking its crystal structure. The ship didn't explode as a human vessel might. Instead, it simply came apart, its perfect geometry finally failing. 3 down, Richard said. 4 to go. Alice nodded. "Now's our chance. Chief Clark, vent the heat sinks now." In the engine room, Susan activated the emergency coolant system. Steam hissed as the excess heat was channeled into special vents along the Nighthawk's hull. "The remaining enemy ships are moving to surround us," Samantha warned. Alice had expected this. "Let them come. Full power to shields." The 4 remaining Haxari dreadnoughts closed in, their weapons charging for a coordinated attack. Just as they fired, Alice gave her next order. "All stop. Cut engines." The sudden command surprised even her own crew, but they obeyed instantly. The Nighthawk's engines shut down, and the ship dropped like a stone, falling out of the path of the Haxari weapons. The enemy blasts passed harmlessly overhead, and several actually hit other Haxari ships on the opposite side of the formation. "Engines. Back online," Alice commanded. "Get us out of here." The Nighthawk's engines roared back to life, pushing the ship away from the confusion of friendly fire among the Haxari vessels. 2 of the enemy ships were now damaged by their own weapons. In the medical bay, Dr. William Harrison worked quickly to treat injured crew members. A console explosion had sent 3 bridge crew to him with burns and cuts. "Hold still," he told Ensign Paul Green as he cleaned a deep cut on the young man's arm. "You'll be back at your post in no time." "How's the battle going?" Paul asked through gritted teeth. "From what I hear, we're winning," Harrison replied with a smile. "But that's no surprise, is it? This is the Nighthawk." Back on the bridge, Alice studied the tactical situation. The remaining Haxari ships were regrouping, but 2 were clearly damaged, leaving only 2 at full strength. "They're hailing us again," Peter Douglas announced from communications. "On screen," Alice ordered. The Haxari commander appeared, its glowing organs pulsing rapidly with what humans had learned to recognize as anger. "This is not possible," it chittered. "1 ship cannot defeat 7 dreadnoughts." "And yet here we are," Alice replied calmly. "You've lost 3 ships, 2 more are damaged. Are you ready to retreat, or do you want to see what else the Nighthawk can do?" The Haxari's mandibles clicked rapidly. "What manner of weapon is this? Ship? What technology gives you such power?" Alice smiled. "It's not the ship, Commander. It's the crew." The Haxari seemed to consider this for a moment. Then it spoke again. "The Haxari Collective does not retreat." The screen went dark. "They've cut communication," Peter said. Alice nodded. "And they're powering up weapons again," she sighed. "So be it. Richard, target their lead ship. Samantha, evasive pattern Echo." As the Nighthawk prepared to re-engage, Lieutenant Kelly Martinez and her Marines stood ready in the ship's boarding bays. If the opportunity arose to capture a Haxari vessel, they would take it. "Look alive, people," Kelly told her troops. "We might be going for a little spacewalk soon." One of her sergeants, Chris Boyd, checked his magnetic boots one more time. "Do you really think we'll board one of those crystal ships, Lieutenant?" Kelly shrugged. "With Captain Ward, anything is possible. That's why the Nighthawk has never lost." The ship shuddered as it dodged another Haxari attack. "Hold on tight," Kelly called as the deck tilted beneath them. "The real fight is just beginning." On the bridge, Alice Ward leaned forward in her chair, eyes fixed on the enemy ships. The Nighthawk had faced impossible odds before and prevailed. This time would be no different. "All ahead full," she ordered. "Let's finish this." The battle had been raging for 2 hours. The space around Procyon was filled with floating debris from the destroyed Haxari ships. The Nighthawk had managed to take down 4 of the 7 enemy vessels, but the remaining 3 were still fighting. Ard Captain Alice Ward wiped sweat from her forehead. The bridge was hot, even with the heat sinks vented. Displays flickered as power fluctuated throughout the ship. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Shields at 30%. Richard Jones replied from the weapons station. "Railguns are overheating. We have missiles left, but not many." "Engine power at 65%, added Jack Nelson, who was now reporting from engineering. "Chief Clark is trying to give us more, but we've pushed the systems pretty hard." Alice nodded. The Nighthawk was taking a beating, but they were still in the fight. The 3 remaining Haxari ships were damaged as well. If the Nighthawk could hold out a little longer, victory was still possible. "The colony on Procyon 4 is asking for an update," Peter Douglas said from communications. "Tell them we're still here," Alice replied. "The Haxari won't get past us." Suddenly, Samantha Powell spoke up from navigation. "Captain, I'm detecting new energy signatures. More ships are entering the system." Alice felt her heart sink. If these were Haxari reinforcements, the Nighthawk might finally face impossible odds. "How many? What type?" she asked. Samantha studied her readings. 5 ships. They're human vessels, Captain. It's the rest of Battle Group 7. A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Alice smiled with relief. "They weren't supposed to arrive for another day," she said. "Communications. Hail the lead ship." The view screen lit up to show the face of Captain Eric Lane of the cruiser Vanguard. "Looks like you started the party without us, Alice May," he said with a grin. "You're just in time for the finale, Eric," she replied. "We've taken down 4 of their ships, but we could use some help with the rest." "Happy to oblige. Battle Group 7 is at your disposal, Captain Ward." With the arrival of the human reinforcements, the tide of battle turned completely. The 3 remaining Haxari dreadnoughts suddenly found themselves outmatched and surrounded. "They're retreating," Samantha announced, watching as the enemy ships began to move away from Procyon 4. "Should we pursue?" Richard asked, his finger hovering over the weapons controls. Alice thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No. Let them go. Let them tell others what happened here today. Let them spread the word about the Nighthawk." The bridge crew nodded in understanding. Sometimes survivors were more valuable than total victory. They would carry the story of their defeat to other alien species. As the Haxari ships disappeared into the darkness of space, Alice ordered a damage assessment. The reports came in from all over the ship. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5, reported Security Chief Greg Palmer. "Emergency force fields are holding." 15 injured crew members, added Dr. Harrison from Medical. 3 serious, but no fatalities. "We'll need at least 2 days to repair the engines properly," said Susan Clark from Engineering. Alice took in all this information with a nod. The Nighthawk had taken damage, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. Most importantly, they had protected the colony and added another victory to their perfect record. "Good work, everyone," she said to her crew. "Set course for Procyon 4. We'll make repairs in orbit." As the Nighthawk limped toward the blue-green planet, Alice received a private message in her quarters. It was from Admiral Miller. Congratulations on another impossible victory, Captain, the Admiral said. His face looked serious despite the praise. Once your repairs are complete, return to Earth immediately. There's something we need to discuss about the Nighthawk. Alice frowned. May I ask what this is about, sir? The Admiral hesitated. It's classified, Captain. Eyes only. I'll tell you when you get here. When the communication ended, Alice sat in silence for a moment. In all her years commanding the Nighthawk, she had never been summoned like this. Something was happening. Something important. 2 days later, with basic repairs completed, the Nighthawk left Procyon 4. The colonists had thrown a celebration for the crew, hailing them as heroes. Now, as they set course for Earth, the mood on the ship was mixed. Pride in their victory, yes, but also curiosity about the Admiral's mysterious summons. What do you think it's about? Richard asked Alice as they shared a meal in the officers' mess. I don't know, she admitted. But I've learned not to worry about things I can't control. The journey to Earth took 8 days at their reduced speed. When they arrived, the Nighthawk was directed to a special docking bay at Earth Orbital Station 1. As Alice prepared to leave the ship and meet with Admiral Miller, she took a moment to look around the bridge. This ship had been her home for 5 years. Together, they had faced countless battles and emerged victorious every time. Whatever the Admiral wanted to discuss, she knew one thing for certain. The legend of the Nighthawk would continue. The station's docking clamps secured the ship with a dull thud. Alice straightened her uniform and headed for the airlock. Richard and Susan joined her as her senior officers. Ready, Captain? Richard asked. Alice nodded. Let's find out what this is all about. They stepped off the Nighthawk and found Admiral Miller waiting for them, along with several scientists Alice didn't recognize. The Admiral's face was grim. Welcome back, Captain Ward, he said formally. We have much to discuss. About what, sir? Alice asked. The Admiral glanced at the scientists, then back at Alice. About the real reason why the Nighthawk is the most feared ship in the galaxy. It's not just your skill as a captain or the bravery of your crew. He paused. There's something built into the very structure of your ship that you need to know about. Alice felt a chill run through her. Whatever the Admiral was about to reveal, she sensed it would change everything she thought she knew about her beloved ship. Come with me, Miller said, gesturing toward a secure conference room. It's time you learned the truth. Alice followed Admiral Miller into a small conference room. The walls were a plain white color with no windows. The only furniture was a round table with 6 chairs. Richard and Susan came in behind her, looking nervous. 3 scientists were already seated at the table. They wore white lab coats with the Earth Fleet Science Division patch on the shoulders. They looked up as Alice and her officers entered. Captain Ward, Commander Jones, Chief Clark, please sit down, Admiral Miller said, gesturing to the empty chairs. Once everyone was seated, the Admiral pressed a button, and the door sealed with a soft hiss. A red light appeared above it, showing that the room was now secure. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level, Miller began. Until now, only 10 people in the entire fleet knew this information. Alice leaned forward. Knew what, sir? The Admiral nodded to one of the scientists, a middle-aged woman with short gray hair. This is Dr. Olivia Bennett, head of the Psychospatial Research Division. Dr. Bennett placed a small device on the table. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above it. Alice recognized it immediately as the blueprint for the Nighthawk. Captain Ward, Dr. Bennett said, what do you think makes the Nighthawk so feared throughout the galaxy? Alice frowned. Our combat record speaks for itself. 378 engagements without a defeat. And why do you think that is? Dr. Bennett asked. Alice glanced at her officers. We have an excellent crew, and the ship itself is a solid design with good weapons and defensive systems. But not the best, the Admiral cut in. There are bigger ships in the fleet, with more advanced weapons. Yet none have the Nighthawk's reputation. Alice felt uneasy. What are you trying to tell us, sir? Dr. Bennett adjusted the hologram, zooming in on a section of the ship's superstructure. Do you see this component here? It looks like part of the ship's frame, doesn't it? Alice nodded. It was just a structural support as far as she could tell. It's not, Dr. Bennett said. Or rather, it's more than that. She tapped some controls and the hologram changed, showing the component glowing with a strange energy. This is a psionic amplifier. Richard frowned. A what? A device that affects the minds of other species, Dr. Bennett explained. Specifically, it amplifies their natural fear responses when they encounter the Nighthawk. The room was silent for a long moment. Alice stared at the hologram, trying to process what she had just heard. Are you saying, she finally spoke, her voice low, that our victories were because of some kind of fear device? No, the Admiral said quickly. The device doesn't create fear out of nothing. It can't make an enemy retreat if there's no reason to be afraid. But when the Nighthawk started winning battles, started building a reputation, the amplifier strengthened that reputation, Susan finished, understanding dawning on her face. It made our enemies more afraid of us than they should have been. Exactly, Dr. Bennett nodded. And the more victories you accumulated, the stronger the effect became. It's a feedback loop. Success breeds fear. The amplifier enhances that fear, which leads to more success. Alice stood up, pushing her chair back. So our victories, our perfect record, it was all a lie? Some kind of mind trick? No, Captain, the Admiral said firmly. Your tactics, your leadership, your crew's bravery and skill, those are all real. The amplifier just gave you an edge. A small advantage in battles where the odds were stacked against you. Alice wasn't sure if she felt angry or betrayed. She had been so proud of what they had accomplished. Now she learned it wasn't entirely their doing. Why tell us now? Richard asked. Why not keep it secret? The Admiral exchanged looks with the scientists. Because we're ready for the next phase. The experiment has been successful beyond our expectations. Experiment? Alice repeated, not liking the sound of that. Dr. Bennett nodded. The Nighthawk was the prototype, the first ship equipped with a psionic amplifier. We needed to see if it worked in real combat situations, and you've proven that it does. Spectacularly well. And now? Susan asked. The Admiral stood up and walked to a view screen on the wall. He activated it, showing a view of a massive shipyard in Earth orbit. Now we're building more ships with the same technology. 20 of them, to be exact. All with the same profile as the Nighthawk. Alice stared at the screen. She could see the ships under construction, their sleek hulls taking shape. You're creating a fleet of ships that can inspire fear, she said. We're calling it the Terror Fleet, the Admiral confirmed. With these ships, we believe we can end conflicts before they begin. Most species will surrender or retreat rather than face ships they believe are unbeatable. Alice turned to face him. And if they discover the trick? If they learn about the amplifiers? That's a risk, Dr. Bennett admitted. But the technology is well hidden and very difficult to detect. And even if they did find out, the psychological effect would already be established. The legend of these ships would continue to work in our favor. Richard had been quiet, thinking. Now he spoke up. Does the rest of the crew need to know about this? The Admiral shook his head. That's up to Captain Ward. Only the ship's commander and senior officers are being told. All eyes turned to Alice. She walked slowly around the table, considering. The revelation had shaken her confidence, made her question their achievements. But looking back at their battles, she knew that the amplifier hadn't fought for them. It had just made their enemies a little more hesitant, a little less coordinated. The real fighting had still been done by her and her crew. What happens to the Nighthawk now? She asked. That's the other reason we called you here, the Admiral said. We want you to take command of the Terror Fleet, Captain Ward. Your experience with the Nighthawk makes you the ideal choice. Alice raised her eyebrows. Command of 20 ships? That's a promotion to Admiral. Miller nodded. Yes, it is. Congratulations, Admiral Ward. Alice looked at Richard and Susan, seeing the surprise on their faces. And my crew? She asked. Key personnel will be promoted and distributed among the new ships as commanding officers, Miller explained. Commander Jones, Chief Clark, you're both on that list. The rest will remain with the Nighthawk as part of the fleet. Alice turned back to the view screen, looking at the ships under construction. A fleet of Nighthawks, all carrying the same secret technology, all designed to spread fear among Earth's enemies. I need time to think about this, she said finally. The Admiral nodded. Of course, but not too long. The first ships will be ready in 2 weeks. As they left the conference room, Alice felt the weight of the decision before her. Command of the most powerful fleet ever created by humans. A fleet built on a foundation of fear, enhanced by hidden technology. She wondered if the price of peace was worth it. 2 weeks passed quickly. Alice spent most of that time alone thinking about the Admiral's offer. She walked the halls of the Nighthawk, watching her crew work, remembering all the battles they had fought together. Had their victories been real, or just the result of the hidden technology? On the final day, she called Richard and Susan to her quarters. Have you made your decision? Richard asked as they sat down. Alice nodded. I have. I'm going to accept the promotion and command of the Terror Fleet. Susan looked surprised. Even after learning about the amplifiers? Because of the amplifiers, Alice said. I've been thinking about this a lot. Yes, the technology gave us an advantage, but it didn't fight our battles for us. It didn't make the hard decisions. It didn't keep this crew together through impossible situations. She stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. And more importantly, she continued, if this technology can prevent wars, save lives on both sides, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that what we're fighting for? Richard nodded slowly. A weapon that makes the enemy not want to fight. It could change everything. Exactly, Alice said. And I want to make sure it's used properly. That's why I'm taking command. The next day, Alice stood in the massive observation deck of Earth, Orbital Shipyard 7. Below her, 20 warships were in their final stages of preparation. Each had the same sleek design as the Nighthawk, the same weapon systems and the same hidden technology. Admiral Miller joined her at the viewport. They're calling it the Terror Fleet, he said. Not very subtle, is it? Alice shook her head. Neither is a fleet of identical warships. Have you selected your flagship? Miller asked. The Nighthawk, Alice said without hesitation. I wouldn't feel right commanding from any other ship. Miller nodded, understanding. Your crew assignments have been approved. Commander Jones will remain as your executive officer. Chief Clark will oversee engineering for the entire fleet. As they spoke, a young lieutenant ran up to them, looking worried. Admiral Miller, Admiral Ward, he said, saluting quickly. We've just received an urgent message from the outer colonies. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from the direction of the Galactic core. Miller frowned. Sorry? The lieutenant shook his head. Unknown configuration, sir. They're not in our database. Over 300 ships, all heavily armed from what we can tell. Alice and Miller exchanged worried looks. 300 ships was a bigger force than anything the Earth fleet had faced before. Time to arrival? Alice asked. 5 days at their current speed, the lieutenant replied. Miller turned to Alice. The Terror fleet isn't fully ready. Half the ships still need final system checks and most of the crews aren't fully trained. Alice looked down at the fleet of Nighthawks. How many can be ready in 5 days? Maybe 12. 15 if we rush. Alice nodded. Then that's what we'll take. She turned to the lieutenant. Send word to all ships that can be made ready. The Terror fleet will make its first deployment in 5 days. As the lieutenant hurried away, Miller looked concerned. Even with the amplifiers, 15 ships against 300, those are terrible odds, Alice. The Nighthawk has faced worse, she replied with a small smile. 4 days later, Alice stood on the bridge of the Nighthawk, now designated as TF-01, flagship of the Terror fleet. Around her, 14 other ships moved in formation, their crews prepared as well as time had allowed. All ships report ready, Admiral, Richard said from the first officer's station. Alice nodded. Set course for the interception point. Let's meet our visitors before they get too close to any colonies. The terror fleet jumped to faster than light travel, heading toward the coordinates where the unknown alien fleet had been detected. When they dropped back to normal space a day later, the sensors immediately lit up with contacts. I count 327 ships, the sensor officer reported. Their configuration is unlike anything we've seen before. They appear to be made of some kind of living material. Alice studied the tactical display. The alien ships were arranged in a massive sphere, surrounding a much larger vessel in the center. They're hailing us, Peter Douglas, who had been promoted to Fleet Communications Officer, announced. On screen, Alice ordered. The view screen lit up to show a strange alien. It had no eyes that Alice could see, but dozens of small sensory organs covered its face. Its skin was a deep purple color that seemed to shift and pulse. Humans, the alien spoke, its words translated by the computer. We have been watching your species for a long time. We know of your ships. We know of your tricks. Alice felt a chill run down her spine. Could they know about the amplifiers? I am Admiral Alice Ward of the United Earth Fleet, she said, keeping her voice steady. State your intentions. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. We are the Vorlak Imperium. We have conquered 67 species across 12 galaxies. Your little fleet does not frighten us, human. We are immune to your psionic manipulations. Alice tried not to show her surprise. They did know about the amplifiers. If you know of us, she said, then you know that humanity doesn't surrender easily. We are counting on it, the alien replied. It has been too long since we had a worthy opponent. The screen went dark. They're moving to attack formation, Richard reported, his voice tense. Alice stood from her command chair, looking at the tactical display. 327 ships against 15. Impossible odds. And without the advantage of the amplifiers, what chance did they have? But then, the Nighthawk had never lost a battle. None at all, in 378 engagements. Amplifiers or not, there was something special about this ship, about her crew. Send to all ships, she ordered. Battle formation Delta. Prepare all weapons. As the terror fleet moved to engage the vastly larger enemy force, Alice felt a strange calm settle over her. This was the true test. Not just of the technology hidden in their ships, but of humanity itself. Let's show them what we can do, she said quietly. The first shots were fired, bright energy beams cutting through the darkness of space. The greatest battle in human history had begun, and its outcome would determine the fate of Earth and all its colonies. Whatever happened next, Alice knew one thing for certain. The legend of the Nighthawk would never be forgotten.